friends. Welcome back. I'm personally taking a minute to slowly settle into this space as it has been a while. The night sky is above me. The creatures of the night are singing, which you most likely can hear. And the moon is halfway between new and full. And on this night, 5 years ago, I was in an immense transition space that without I would not be showing up in this format. As so many of you know, my motherhood journey brought me so many new and wonderful ways of relating to myself and my being. And part of that was leaning into all of the parts of me and doing that authentically. So part of this podcast today, let me just kind of restart. This is the 11th podcast, so thank you for listening. And I have been on an indefinite hiatus, as some of you have been aware of. And I have been busy doing lots of other things and expanding myself in different ways. There is a beautiful little possum creature out in the woods that I am watching right now, scurrying through the yard. And so he's went back into the woods now, but he came out to greet me a moment. When I started this podcast, I felt it in me to bring forth something that was so precious and potent, just like bubbling up into my being and wanted to come forth through me. And so I simply said yes to it, and I opened the door, and I've been slowly and surely releasing episodes and so forth. But like I said, there's been quite an indefinite hiatus recently, and that's not because I don't have a million things bubbling up, but mostly because I don't have the time to put them in this format. Or rather, I should say, I don't have the space for that at this time. But I'm working to create it, and so I'm starting with this here episode, and hopefully I will have more episodes for you soon. But I just appreciate each and every one of you who listen and who enjoy this podcast. I want to be honest, the podcast market is like incredibly oversaturated, and so if you're listening to my podcast and giving me your precious time, I really, really value that, and I feel it is very, very precious. That being said, I have no idea who listens to my podcast and what, and I guess maybe the why you listen to my podcast, etc. yeah, I just wanted to, in this podcast, make an invite for those who do listen to introduce yourself in some way, shape, or form, whether that is through, sharing about it and tagging me on social media, or sending me a direct email and sharing in response to maybe your favorite episode so far. But yeah, I just feel like the podcast market in general is really, really oversaturated. And so, I'm not actually out here to compete with anybody. I am not interested in creating a massive following. If I got a lot of people listening, that's great, but that is not my specific goal. I'm not trying to create that. I'm trying to, or rather, I'm not trying to do anything. I am releasing what is coming through to me. And so I just kind of wanted to talk about that and my format and the way I do my podcast and what is coming up through me now as to how to continue with my podcast. So, as many of you have noticed, I have a podcast that is just a blank screen. Essentially, you might turn on a screen to press play, but the visualizations are not there. There is no visualization of me speaking to you. No visualization of my guest. And there's a few reasons for that. It's actually quite intentional. In our world of media saturation, oversaturation, we are very prone to want to be always gratified with this visible format, with getting to see people and seeing their expressions and seeing their body language. And I'm not saying those things aren't important. I feel like they are very important, and in different situations they are absolutely necessary. But for me personally, I feel that through my podcast I would like people to be immersed into a different kind of consumption. I want it to be a thoughtful consumption. I want to invite you into my world audibly, and I want you to experience my words in a different way than just you would if you were visually seeing me. And exercising our imagination is something that is vastly lost. And so, while it may be uncomfortable and it may be even frustrating for you to be in this kind of forced box by participating with my podcast, I hope you actually find it enjoyable and not like a box. I hope it feels actually more freeing to have a podcast coming at you in this format. So that's one of the things that I kind of wanted to talk about, is why I do that, and I feel that I should continue to do that. I've been contemplating, as I'm hitting a new, kind of a new energetic up with my podcast, I've been feeling through, like, if I want to change things and do things differently, and I'm going to keep that the same. There will still be no visualizations. And it's actually easier for me to keep the visualizations as far as like editing and releasing and so forth, but I feel like the extra work that I put in to get rid of the visualizations, I feel is very valuable because of the reasons I just explained. With that being said, I'm sure that if you've been listening to my podcast, that you've also notice that at the end of every episode, I bring forth some sort of vocalization that is coming through me. And usually that vocalization, in many of them, it has come through directly upon recording the entire podcast. But for a lot of them, it's happened, the actual vocalization has happened post-podcast record, post-edit, and it is on its way to being released, and that is when some of the vocalizations have been recorded at that stage. This juncture, as I am going through a new energetic with processing the podcast and all, I'm feeling to do something different, and that is to do the vocalization with my guests, in the presence of my guests. So, in other words, singing to my guests. And so, I don't actually know how this is going to be received. I am 100% recording this before I am inviting people into this kind of new space. But I just feel this is what is the next iteration of this podcast, energetics, and the what I want to be putting out. So yeah, so that's going to be new for me, and I assume there's going to be some cracking voice, some maybe even laughter, some apprehensive energetics, especially for the first few, and maybe actually for all of them, because with every new person, it's going to be a new energetic that I'm experiencing. So yeah, I feel like this is a way for me to both challenge myself, but also really lean into what I'm feeling is coming through with the entirety of this offering and this work that I feel that I am called to do through this format. So yeah, I hope that actually sounds exciting to you all. It's like a little journey for me, so I hope it's also a little journey for you. So I wanted to, in this podcast, discuss a few of those things that I was going to be doing a little bit different, and also just talking about some other basic housekeeping, on my end, things I've been processing regarding the podcast and other things. Again, as some of you may have noticed, I have, in the last 6 months, I believe, maybe even longer now, last year, maybe the last 12 months, I have changed the formatting of my podcast, or access to my podcast on my website. So it's now sort of like a blog format, and you can just scroll through and go down. It is a lot easier if you just simply click on one video and go through the Rumble profile there. You can access them that way as well. I put them onto Rumble because I felt like that would be a great location for people to be able to fast forward or rewind or whatever, as the player that was actually embedded onto my website did not allow for those things. And I know sometimes when I'm listening to podcasts, I miss stuff and I can't go back unless I start the podcast over in the format that it was at. So it was just a little frustrating, and so that was like a little technical glitch. So I just wanted to fix that for my listeners, so that they would have access to making it a little bit more easier to access for them. So that has happened as well. Another thing that has happened since my last episode, not since my last episode release, but since the last recording of it, I have now appeared on social media. So if you are on social media, I am on Instagram, and I am there as sacrednectar.love, and so you can access my profile by using that handle. Again, that's sacrednectar.love, and I would love to hear from you. If you are a listener and you're on social media and you would be so kind as to, you could shout me out, shout the podcast out. I don't have a lot on there about the podcast. There are a few posts about the podcast, and there will be more coming, but hopefully I will be able to release something a little bit more frequently. I would like to do at least once a month, but I'm just gonna play it by ear. I'm gonna roll with the flow, and I'm not gonna push myself. My main priority in life is my children, and it always will be, because there is nothing greater that I can give to the world than to show up 100% for my children. And yes, releasing this podcast and doing things related to this are also part of me, and I have to take care of those things, because I am responsible to care for my being and the things that inspire me and light me up. But I will give as much of my attention as needed to my children first. So thank you for being understanding of that. And if you're not understanding, that's okay too. I actually don't care if you're not understanding, but that's what I'm going to do. So, yeah, I am actually pretty excited about this new phase of my podcast. I'm going to be a little bit more, I want to use the word aggressive, but it feels harsh. But yeah, I want to be a little bit more aggressive about reaching out to people that I would like to see on my podcast and inviting them on. In other words, I would like to be a little bit more frequent with that and really put that on the front burner, so to speak. I hope that my next few guests that I do have, that I've invited, will both inspire you and be encouraging for you. I would also love to hear from you, if you are a listener, about maybe conversations that you think you would like me to have with other people, whether that's somebody that you follow on Instagram or just like somebody that you find to be really interesting in the world that you think would bring a different shade or color to my space. So yeah, if you have any kind of, feedback or suggestions for guests that you would like to see on this podcast, I would love to hear from you. So again, feel free to shoot me an email, or you can tag me on social media to point somebody out or so forth. So yeah, I'm open, and I would love to hear from you guys as my listeners. I would love to have some interaction with y'all. I'm just trying to see and feel through if anything else is coming up to share. I have been for a very, very, very long time fighting a professional format to my podcast. I understand its purpose, the intro music, the whole podcast, the outro, like and subscribe to my channel, all that kind of energy. I see its value. But for me, it feels restricted. It feels like a box. And I like flow, and so sometimes I might say those things, and sometimes I might not. And I don't have a pre-recorded tracks that I just plop in there at the right segment point. I could do that. I know that's what everyone else does. But again, it hasn't felt right for me yet. So I'm playing with the energetics. I'm feeling through things, and I feel like that's the best way to navigate life, is to feel through it. So in light of that, I hope you all are feeling through the summer, the hot, the sticky, the muggy, and the warm, beautiful sun. I was so blessed to be kissed by the sun so passionately that I am now peeling, and I am pleased that I got a sunburn, actually. I've had a fair share of people tell me that I could have done things differently, and, all my sunburn pain is all my fault, and etc., etc. But, I really actually am quite pleased with the fact that I got a sunburn, because the location on my body that I was burned is a part that very rarely sees the sun. And as the sun was beaming into this part of my body, I felt energy shifting. I felt spaces opening. Energy opened inside of my being. And I'm thankful for that. I feel like in our world where we are constantly encouraged to be on the go, and we're rarely given time and space to feel through the processes of our lives that are unfolding before us, and the experiences that we are called to navigate or are thrust into, or even things that we witness. Stopping to feel and process is very essential for the human. Our body processes things a lot, I would say slower than maybe our brain does. And the body is very slow to integrate things. And I feel like there's good reason for that. I feel like it helps us to understand our relationship with the gravity of reality, so to speak. That we are finite beings. And though maybe we've experienced something and processed it in our head, our body still has to go through the process as well. And it's our physical matter, We think in waves, brain waves, that's energetic waves. Our body is density, it's tangible matter, and so it takes a lot longer for those waves to process through the physical matter. And so I would just like to encourage you in these summer months when the sun is nice and warm and glowing and kissing you, and you get to play in water and be nourished by the elements around you a lot easier than you are maybe during the winter months. To be with yourself, to be with your feelings, to be with the energies, and to process. Winter is also a time of processing, but I feel like it's very enriching for us in our lives to process with every season. And so whatever you have coming up, I would just love to encourage you to sit down with yourself, give yourselves time and space, turn your phone off, get away from other people, go in nature if that feels right to you. Maybe a library would feel better for some people. It doesn't matter the location as long as you feel safe and able to fully open yourself to yourself. Sometimes that means crying. Sometimes that just looks like journaling, etc. You might need to yell or scream. So it looks different for everybody. But I would just encourage you to find a place where you can be you and all of you, and allow yourself to be all of you with yourself. Whether that's crying or laughing or wailing or talking to yourself sarcastically, whatever that is, let that through. Because allowing our personal sound waves to be heard through our ears, through the expression of our voice returning back to us through our ears, is also an actual, really, truly, very helpful way to process things. For us to speak it, to us to verbalize it, for us to cry, and let that sound, let those utteраtions be heard by our own ears. This, in and of itself, is extremely valuable medicine for our being and helps us to process. So if you need to cry, cry. Do not stuff it down. Maybe there's a situation or an environment that you're in that you cannot do that in, maybe when you're listening to this podcast or something like that. But that's okay. Make time and space for it. Make time and space for it. Set aside time. Set aside a space designated for you to feel and release whatever it is that is coming up and needs to be released. I was recently talking with a very dear person to me about releasing and the tendency to, like I said, just constantly hold it in and go, go, go. And a lot of people live like this. They don't stop. And the end result is a variety of dis-ease within the body, ranging from anxiety to panic attacks to large-scale disease issues. Stress and anxiety are like top killers out there. In case you don't know, you can look up science if that's what you need to help you understand that chronically loading yourself with stress and not finding a space to decompress and be present with it is really harsh for your being. So, yeah, just have some good feeling times. Feel through it all. That's what I'm doing with this podcast. And as I have finished my little bit of encouragement about feeling through things, I just wanted to share about things that have been happening in my world in the last few months. And just share about things that I have bubbling in me that are coming up. So as many of you know, like I mentioned a minute ago, I'm on social media, and about a month ago now, I invited my Instagram followers as well as people on my email list to be part of something that I called a 3-day nourishment exploration. And it was really fun for me to gather with everyone. It was a free event, and it was held on Instagram. I simply gathered with people to explore nourishment and ways that we are nourishing ourselves and can be nourishing ourselves. And specifically as women, tending to our whole being. One of the things that I talked about was that nourishment, large scale in our society, is like most people, when they think of nourishment, they think of like food. And yes, 100%. That's pretty basic. Nourishment of the body is, I would say, the first place to start as a female. If you're feeling like you're chronically stressed out, overwhelmed, etc., and you're looking for nourishment, starting with the body is probably a really great place to start, like getting your diet in order and so forth is what I mean by that. But I feel like we are, it's true. I don't feel it. I know it. We are whole beings. So we're not just the body. We are also the mind. We are also the energy. In the yogic sciences, there's the 10 auric bodies. Even within like traditional Chinese medicine, there was different ways of looking at the energetics of the body. And we now can see with, thermal imaging and other things, there are different fields around the body. And, our heart space puts out a magnetic field, and our mind, puts out an electric field. I believe I have that right. I might have flipped that backwards as I spoke it, but we have more parts to us than just our body, is the point. And so that was something that I really brought to the table to discuss, is that if we want to be nourished, we need to think on the dimension of our whole being. We need to think about our whole being. And, for a lot of us in modern day society, we often just consume without really thought of how this affects our energy. And I would just like to encourage you, if you are listening to this, to be very conscious of what you consume through your ear gates and your eye gates. These are very powerful for us as humans. We are very easily prone to think things from seeing them. Like if you take a child and they see something, even if it's a trick, like a magic trick, it has an illusion. And there's a lot of illusion in our worlds right now. And I'm not saying to go out and look for the illusions or whatever. I'm just saying, to just be conscious that you're a whole being. And if you are ingesting things that are, I'm not going to say toxic, but just not nourishing, these affect your whole being. Just consider this as part of the things that are nourishing you. Consider what you ingest through your eyes, through your ears, and your mouth, your nourishment. consider the things you receive through your skin as nourishment. Are you receiving positive, gentle, loving touch? Or are you being abused? Honestly, these are different forms of nourishment. What about, let's say, the environments that you're in? Do you get to experience laughter and love and joy and friendly bantering? Is this an experience that you get to have? This is part of your nourishment. And so when I invited people into this 3-day nourishment event, I was just really excited to explore these things, and we did. And I was just amazed at all the stuff that came up for me through the experience, helping me to actually see a little bit more of the areas of my life where I could be nourishing myself, attending to my nourishment on a deeper level, and also considering things that maybe I didn't consider before nourishment to my body and to my being. For instance, one of those things is the flowers that are in bloom. It's the summer. There's flowers blooming all throughout the warm months. And I was enjoying them, but it wasn't until the actual nourishment exploration that I did with other people that it really came into my being. I was being nourished on an energetic level every day by the flowers that were blooming around me, and I hadn't even really taken a minute to process it and to receive the gratitude that I was feeling for it. And so I have been attending to that, and like I said, the things that came up for me were also expansive. And so that was really fun, and so I put a lot of energy into that. And so that actually leads me to my very last point. I'm currently feeling through an offering that I would hope to have in the future, where I work with people, couples specifically, who are looking to conceive. And I would like to work with them in relation to comprehending the full energetics of conception, as well as its multidimensional nature and the multidimensional nature of building a human. Like I said, with my 3-day nourishment event that I talked about a bit ago, we are a whole being with multiple levels of energetics. And I feel like in our world right now there is a huge attention given to, and this is for the last at least 100 years in our world, so it's not just recently, it's been this way for a while. Our attention is largely on the material world, the things that we can touch, manipulate, move, etc. And that goes for research too, with diet and so forth, specifically even just around the body and so forth. But there are so many cultures, in the ancient medicine world, for instance, traditional Chinese medicine. It's thousands of years old at this point. It's a very ancient and highly, it has so many different facets and levels, and Ayurveda as well. It's very sophisticated. It's very sophisticated and detailed. The formats, the way that they process, an ailment or so forth, they're very fine-tuned. Let me put it that way. Their models of looking at health and well-being is very fine-tuned, and they understand that we are whole beings. And in Western medicine, we have been, for the last, like I said, few hundred years, been focusing largely on just the matter. And while I don't think there's anything wrong with that, I feel like that's an important part of our evolution, I do think that it is now time for us to collectively start being aware of the fact that we have multi-dimensions to us, especially when it comes to creating our offspring. And I just really, really, really see this as a blaring thing right now. It's to become aware of and to start working through, and there are no words for it. I've been wrapping my head around like what to even call it. I don't know anybody doing this work. I don't know of anybody that's even like within the sciences, it's pretty rare to find a study that involves the whole being energetics in relation to pregnancy and conception and so forth. Like I said, a lot of the information out there is 100% about just the body, your diet, your lifestyle, your exercise, etc. And all of those things are important and they all matter, but there are other dimensions of this equation as well. And so I just really feel this, and so I'm working on an offering for just that, for inviting couples into a multi-dimensional conception experience if they're looking to conceive. And if you're looking to conceive, just know that your preparation for it should start, science says at least 3 months before. In my opinion, it starts, forever, because it's everything impacts, but I feel like a good quality year to at least 6 months is essential for getting the whole full energetics aligned for conception. So yeah, this has been in my heart, this has been bubbling forth, playing with ideas, like the conscious conception coach. Sounds so cheesy. So many different things. Playing with the names, playing with the energies. I don't know what I'll call it when I actually release it to the world, but it is something that's coming up, and those are words that have also come up with ways to describe it. Do not like to call myself a coach or put myself in any kind of box like that. I don't like labels. I think they're just as useless sometimes as visuals in a podcast, because it ruins our experience of perceiving with our heart. It's actually something that I wanted to address in this podcast as well, as to why I don't introduce my podcast guests usually, and that is simply because I would like you to listen to them from their heart, from your heart, and listen to their heart, and perceive them differently than through their credentials or their accolades or their whatever else that you may hear or go find on the internet. The people I have onto my podcast, I invite them because something in my heart is encouraging me to invite them, and not because of their robust credentials, though some of them do have immense amounts of schooling and, doctorates and research and all sorts of other stuff, even, multiple books. So all these things are a part of these people, but I feel like the greatest thing that we can do for both ourselves and for others is to listen with our heart and listen to their heart. And that's how I want my podcast to continue, is from the heart. From my heart to your heart, wherever you are, whoever you are. So if you've made it this far in this podcast, thank you for your time once again. I really enjoy showing up in this format. It is a work in progress for me and something that I enjoy, so it's very encouraging for me to do. And so I just thank you for being with me on this journey. And in light of that, and with all of my announcements and sharings and everything else, I think I will now sing to you. And like I said, there may be some cracking voice, but I'm just going to roll with it. stars overhead, shining down on me. The creatures are gracing me with their songs. The night is singing to my being, and I'm singing back to it, to the beautiful earth all around me, blessing me every day. Thank you, thank you, thank you for giving me such love. Thank you for opening my heart. Thank you for blessing my being. Thank you, dear trees, for standing tall in the breeze, for rooting down deep, rooting down deep through me. I feel your love. I feel the medicine around me. I'm so nourished. I'm so nourished. The living matter nourishes me. The energies of love surrounding me. I am so nourished through all of my being. I am so nourished. So you, my dear listener, nourish your being. Go forth to the earth and nourish your being. Let your bare feet hit the earth. Let the breeze flow across your skin. Pound the earth with your feet as you run. Bless her with your love. She loves to feel you on her body. Thank you, beautiful loved ones. Beautiful, precious, energetic beings walking around, discovering yourselves and your journey. I'm here. I'm on mine too. Thank you for joining me. And I'll see you again in an energetic manner in podcast 12. So thank you for listening, friends. Be well.